You know, boys, sometimes in life, and as well as comic books, things seem to be heading somewhere. You know, they seem to be building towards something. And
it's my birthday!
yes, they seem to be building towards events, but your birthday was yesterday, Josh, so shut the fuck up! All right, guys, welcome back to another installment of After Hours. This time we were talking about, as we were talking about before, our segments are going to be geared towards how to fix the comic industry. Today we're going to be talking solely about events, the way that the comic industry structures their entire universes and their comic lines around these big events, and some of the detriments, some of the pros, some of the cons, the intentions, stuff like that. Last week, contrary to what you might think, we do re-listen to our podcast and try and learn from past mistakes and try and fix them in an ongoing series. So we did see that we stumbled across, we started stumbling in the beginning of last week, and we want to just hit the ground running today. So we're going to get straight into this thing and start off with the intentions behind the comic book publishers and why they're putting out these events. The first thing being that they just want to bring their entire universe together. They want to see all these characters together. They know us as fans, it's just a big nerdgasm thing to see all your favorite characters in just one giant room, kind of the way the Infinity War movie was. It was pretty awesome. Another thing they want to do is they want to change the landscape of their universe, right? The event is supposed to have repercussions, and so the way the universe is at the end of the event is not the way it was before. You know, just they don't leave it the way it was before they got there. The next thing they try and do is they want to galvanize their universe. They want to kind of bring everything together, and they want to get readers reading titles that they perhaps weren't picking up from before. So, you know, the way tie-ins work like that, if you're a completionist during an event, you want to get all the tie-ins. Perhaps one of those tie-ins piques your interest, and you want to pick up that person's ongoing titles after the event is over. And the last thing, of course, they want to do is boost sales. That's of course, everybody's big motivation. That's our motivation here at the shop. We want to make money. That's what the publishers ultimately want to do. They're a business. They want to make money. They know the events make money. So there's our intent from the big publishers. Now we're going to get straight into the pros, as in what are the positive effects that these events actually have on the comic book industry as a whole. The first one being that it does boost sales. But sometimes it'll operate under the guise of being quote-unquote collectible, which means everybody is out to get these events, not so much that they're just looking forward to them so much, but they're actually trying to get all the books because they're hoping one day, of course, it is worth a lot of money.
If last year shows us anything in sales, I mean, events were up there in top 10 quite a few times, so it shows that it does boost sales. And obviously as a publisher and even as a reader, you want sales to be high so they can continue publishing titles.
And sometimes with some events, they do come up in collectability for a simple fact of deaths, first appearances of new characters, and such other stuff like that.
Yep. Sometimes you get new characters. Sometimes you get old characters dying off, perhaps become big issues later, especially if perhaps a movie is based around that specific part of the event.
And even older characters returning from the dead.
Yeah, sometimes you get that. I mean, if we talk about like Crisis on Infinite Earths, it killed off Barry Allen for almost 2 decades, and now it had a nice lasting repercussion, but it was a big event, and there's of course the famous Crisis on Infinite Earths cover where Superman's holding a Supergirl, where she looks like she's dead.
Have you ever noticed that it looks an awful lot like Cyclops holding a Phoenix?
Yeah, it sure did.
It looks an awful lot. It looks pretty similar.
Yeah, it also looks, kind of reminds me of a Titan special issue I read today. The next thing you can do, or one of the pros that is possible, is that it can change the landscape of the universe in an interesting new way. Now, if I'm thinking to myself, the first things that come to mind is one of my favorite events is Marvel's first Civil War. And the way that the entire universe operated post-Civil War was the Superhero Registration Act did not go away. They didn't just write it off. No, everyone was left to deal with the fallout and the ripple effect of everyone having to be a registered hero. If not, you're an outlaw, you're an underground Avenger, vigilante, whatever. Everyone was dealing with that for years after the Civil War.
And as we previously mentioned, was new characters. This is a big opportunity for you to introduce new characters interacting with the characters we love, which is a great way to introduce them as opposed to introducing them in a solo title when you have no care or nothing about them. Whereas in an event, they can operate and work with people we know, so it feels familiar to us.
And also, I mean, not one of my favorites, but the most recently Secret Wars, another example of this. is the Ultimate Universe and the 616 universe colliding together, and now you see these characters that you only saw in the Ultimate Universe interacting still with characters from the main 616.
Right, and I think most people would agree that seeing Peter Parker and Miles Morales being able to interact, and it not just being just one special flare-up event, but ongoing.
Right.
For us as fans is actually really, really fun because there's a lot of Miles Morales fans, there's a lot of Peter Parker fans. Now both fan bases can have their cake and eat it too, and even the interactions between them, we can see they're both Spider-Man, yet we can see they're very different versions of a Spider-Man. So.
Another really good example too is, like, I know we've mentioned it multiple times now, but the death of Barry Allen. I mean, one thing that really boosts up is the idea of Wally taking on being the Flash. Now, I know that there's some people, Jake included and me included. Wally's one of our personal favorites, and it's a really fun. That's a really underrated kind of deal where you read these old stories where he's going through taking the mantle of the Flash, and it's actually really fun. It adds a lot of character to Wally. The fact that he's sitting here constantly going to himself, not that he's not fast enough, but that he's not as good as Barry.
Right, that actually leads us into the next possible pro, which is it allows character growth by seeing the characters that we know and love either react or live through these events and the way they affected them. So basically, Wally taking over as Flash. Part of Wally being Flash is just, does he feel like he's able to fill the shoes of Barry? Does he feel inferior to Barry? Is he always going to be compared to Barry? That became a big part of his his characterization during that time because the death of Barry Allen was such a significant event, but it lasted and it carried through, and that's what kind of projects Wally's character arc. Right. So I think those kinds of things are always fun.
And it's a good opportunity to see characters like Oliver Queen, for example, who doesn't have any superpowers, come in and kind of question his role with the team, where he's like, why the hell am I here? I'm just a regular dude, and you all have superpowers. But yet he still holds his own at times on different fields and rankings, but he's still there. So it's nice to see them be like, holy shit, this is kind of out of my realm, but I'm going to do my best to fix this.
Another good example is after Civil War with the New Avengers. I mean, the whole team, everybody starts viewing each other differently. They start feeling like they're not as much as friends or a family as what they thought they were.
They're more on like a survival mission at that point. Yeah.
It's so I mean, it's really is fun to see these characters go through these new kind of problems that could also be something that most people could go through in actual life.
Right, yeah, and whether or not you feel an event was successful or not, if it was executed well, if it has lasting repercussions and the writers can find a way to make that event ripple outwards, and then you find your characters that you know and love. Maybe the event didn't really do it for you, but now the things that the trials and tribulations your favorite characters are going through, that makes it interesting. Like for me, Civil War, I love Civil War, but actually seeing Tony having to become the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and take it on as a burden, and he's also heading up the new registered Mighty Avengers heroes. Like, you just saw the toll it was taking on him in his own solo series as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all these things. Like, times questioning whether or not he did the right thing, and this burden falling to him. He knows it has to be him, but he doesn't really want it to be him. So those kinds of things really make for good character interaction and good growth through character.
Well, and then also the same thing with after Secret Empire with Cap. Mm-hmm. When Cap goes back to, when we get normal Cap back, the very first issue is the issue where he goes to a town where they're just doing nothing but praising Cap. And you just kind of see how Secret Empire affected him, even though technically, well, I'm not going to spoil. Well, I'm spoiling it, even though it wasn't really him the whole time. And so it's fun to see that.
Yeah, and one last example is the way the last Secret Wars came out. Everything that happened there is what kind of launched Doctor Doom's newest path, and why he became the infamous Iron Man, and he kind of left his villainy behind, and actually has a big play in the newest Marvel 2-in-1 annual. So, that's a very big pro for me as far as events and the things that can come out of these events and make it an enjoyable read. The other thing it does is it allows for character interactions that we don't always get to see. We're used to seeing Cap and Tony. We're used to seeing Spider-Man and Daredevil, or we're used to seeing Spider-Man or Superman and Batman hanging out. But then when you get things like, here's Cap and Adam talking to like Dr. Fate, something that's just not an interaction you get all the time. But when these events come together, we get to see the way these egos and these personalities clash or get along, and you start to see a dynamic between certain characters that either A, wasn't there in the first place, or two, you just haven't seen in forever. and it's a good, nice, fresh reminder that there is this dynamic or history between these characters, because it's just so deeply rooted, and you just kind of think, I never read that issue, I never read that arc, but that's an interesting dynamic to add to their relationship.
Another example, and one that Jake will probably disagree with me on as being an event, but the Amalgam back in '97. I mean, that is nothing but fangasm right there. You get to see Cap talking to Superman or Batman. You get to see Wonder Woman talking to Storm, Superboy and Spider-Man hanging out, and you get to see Hulk and Superman fight. And those interactions are always kind of fun, especially when you don't think that will happen. The same with the JLA versus Avengers run.
All right, yeah. And then the last pro we're going to hit is that it can sometimes lead to some of the best stories ever told in their respective universes. Now, Crisis on Infinite Earths is considered the very first crossover big event, right? That is still today praised as one of the best stories in all of DC. Whether or not you agree, that's fine, but it's still considered that to this day. Civil War is, again, that one's really divided amongst fans, which I don't really understand why, but...
I love the graphic novel of Civil War.
Yeah,
it's great.
I love Civil War. But the thing is, it's also, I think, the highest selling comic book series in the last almost 20 years. So I think that whether or not you like it or not, you can't argue it was successful, and it's considered one of the most iconic storylines in Marvel of all time. I mean, hell, they made a Captain America movie called Civil War out of it because it was such a successful comic book run.
Right.
Same argument can be made about Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah, or Infinity Gauntlet.
As you mentioned about Civil War, the ripple effects went into individual titles. It wasn't just an event and done. It actually rippled out into other people's titles, and the effects lasted up till today.
Right. And a pro for us as retailers is that when there's an event that happens and is a successful event, we start to see a bigger influx of people looking to buy comic books. We see a bigger vested and garnered interest from the general public. Like, wow, I heard about this event through word of mouth, and now I kind of want to read that, and I also want to read some other stuff. Like, it can bring in new readers, which of course is always part of the goal of any comic book publisher. They want to bring in new readers. There's always an untapped market out there somewhere. So for us as retailers, we see people coming in, hearing about an event. Like you said, during Secret Empire, you heard people that weren't comic book fans hearing about Captain America being a Nazi. You know what I mean? And it brought people in wanting to at least get that issue.
Yeah. Another one is Metal. Regardless of how I feel towards it, we constantly are getting people who do not read comic books coming in here, and they want to read Metal because they might not read comic books, but they do like the Batman aesthetic, and it does center a lot around Batman. And then also another one is you also get these movies that show some kind of praise towards an event, and so like Infinity Gauntlet, we can't keep our hands on Infinity Gauntlet trades.
So yeah, 2 weeks ago, I think we ordered 5 copies. Today we just sold our last copy that we had in the shop. I think we sold close to 30 of those volumes of Infinity Gauntlet trade paperbacks. So yeah, those things as a retailer, we see as a pro, the event brings in a lot of people. We always see good sales numbers on things like Doomsday Clock, Metal, Secret Empire, what was another one? No Justice saw some pretty good ones, but all these events we do see an uptick in sales numbers, which is of course a pro for us because at the end of the day we are a business. We do what we love. We're lucky. Now, again, like we said in the last podcast, we are going to get into the cons section. Every nerd's favorite thing to do, which is bitch and complain about the misuse and mishandling of their favorite characters or something they hold beloved and treasured. So let's just jump right into this.
And also, Jake's therapist says this is really good for his anger management.
Yeah, actually, this podcast, my therapist says very therapeutic. I don't know what that means. Fucking metal.
Fucking metal.
Fucking metal, dude. Okay, so then the cons are every title has to have a tie-in, right? It makes readers and collectors spend more money on issues they don't actually need. But if you're a completionist, which most collectors really are, unless you're the guy that comes in just wanting issue ones. But, I mean, if you're a completionist, you get all the tie-ins, right? And sometimes these tie-ins are completely needless. You just slap Civil War on that, or you slap Secret Empire or Original Sin or Dark Knight's Metal. Doomsday Clock hasn't any tie-ins, but you slap that on the cover and people automatically know now this is a tie-in. I have to get this. I need the full story. don't always get the full story. I mean, sometimes that issue has nothing to do with the event itself, and you spent the money on it, you have it. Yeah, you completed the event, but you spent money on something you didn't need to get the full story.
And vice versa. Sometimes the tie-ins actually do go with the story, and you get some people who don't really want the tie-ins. They just want the main thing, and you have to be able. Sometimes, like with Metal and Secret Empire, there is tie-ins that need to be read for you to understand what's going on.
You jumped ahead to the next con. Was there anything that you wanted Dallas to discuss?
No, I was actually going to bring it
Okay,
up.
all right. So
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. No, you're absolutely right.
It goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
And the hard thing about it is there's no way to discern or tell. If you walk in and you see metal tie-in, metal tie-in, metal tie-in, you don't know which one's essential to read, so you're like, shit, I got to get them all. And if the people that are selling them haven't got a chance to read them that day, they can't advise it, so you either have to research online. So again, you're confusing your reader and pushing them away from it, and they have to go and do research or spend the money.
Yeah, and this also ties into the next con. So we're just going to make all three of these points just one big talking issue. But, I mean, yes, of course, if we don't know that tie-in is really a tie-in, because they're not really solicited well on our order forms that we have to do, so we just order usually the normal amount for that series. Then you find out it's a metal tie-in as soon as you open that fucking box, and you're like, shit, I automatically know I need to order more copies of this. And lo and behold, because it is a metal tie-in, it's already out of stock or on back order. But the thing is, too, if some of these tie-ins are absolutely essential reads to the main event, that means that story is not sufficient to tell an isolated story on its own. So now you're telling me that you couldn't tell your story in the main, either 5 to 8 to 10, 12 issues, that you needed these tie-ins to fill in the gaps. Now I'm a little less inclined to actually want to read that story, because I should be able to get this event and get the full story. Like for me, if you ask me, if I read the 7 issues of Civil War, I got the full story. Anything else was just an added bonus. It just made it feel a little bit more real. It felt like it had a little bit more impact on the universe as a whole. But I didn't feel the need to read the tie-ins to Civil War. I felt like I got the full story in those 7 issues. All right. So sometimes the tie-in issues can throw off or interrupt individual ongoing series. Now, this was painfully obvious, and I know we keep beating Dark Knight's Metal,
We keep beating Dark Knight's Metal
Now-
and praising Civil War.
Now, while we're beating it, it is one of the most recent events
Exactly.
that happened and completed. So
Right.
and
it's-
people are still coming in asking for
Right.
issues of it.
Right, but sometimes, Green Arrow had a tie-in, Teen Titans had a tie-in, Titans had a tie-in. Some of these series that, every other issue had nothing to do with Metal. Here I go and I get the next issue, the next installment in this series, and the next thing I know, it's a Metal tie-in, and maybe I haven't been collecting Metal, and maybe I'm reading Green Arrow and he's doing his Star City thing, and the next thing I know is he's in Gotham helping out Robin and Nightwing and Harley Quinn, and then the very next issue is just the ongoing series that picked up from the issue before. I'm like, what the fuck? This is a completely needless issue, and it interrupted my story. I didn't need it.
Yeah, it was, and especially that issue in particular.
Yeah, the Green Arrow
Yeah,
one was probably
it's-
the most flagrant.
Because you're going through this whole thing, and he has this huge thing going on, and all of a sudden you're jumping into what looks like a post-apocalyptic kind of world, and then you go in and you're like, okay, so this came out of nowhere, and I feel out of place, and it didn't feel the same. It wasn't written kind of the same way. So as a Green Arrow,
I don't even think it was the same artist on it either.
No. It was just like somebody just else was like, okay, we're putting this with the Green Arrows,
Yeah.
and just put it right and just fit it wherever
they
they
picked
wanted.
a series out of the hat.
And
I'm like,
then-
okay, Green Arrow gets a tie-in.
And then right after that issue, it just continues off of the issue that happened before it.
Yeah.
it's almost as if we've said before, communication is important. And it seems like they made these event plans and they're like, okay, we're going to do this character, and this character, but we're not going to talk to the team that's currently writing and doing the art for these, or arting, as Jake would like to say, doing the art for these characters. Because when you don't consult them, you don't know what's going on and what their future plans are. So you make your own story and then interrupt their story because you just want to make the sales.
Yeah, and it kind of feeds into another con that we have, which, events with no long-lasting repercussions. It kind of makes you wonder, what was the purpose of this event? Because, like I said, if you read Green Arrow, the metal tie-in, and then the next issue, it's like it never happened. It didn't affect Green Arrow's world one way or the other. It's like, here's just this weird outlying sore thumb of an issue, and then his story just continues from there. So once this event happens and it gets wrapped up, and if it doesn't affect everyone's ongoing titles, then what was really the point of the event in the first place? Because where I'm coming from as a reader and a collector, if you're going to do these big events, it should shake up the universe as a whole. it's going to be left different than before the event started. The whole world should be changed after this. That to me is the point of a crossover event, that the world changes after that event. Again, a good, I know we keep talking about it, but a good example is Civil War. I mean, another good example to me is Secret Invasion. Those two things, they happened back to back, but they both had big, long-lasting effects, and it affected everybody. After the Secret Invasion thing happened, everyone was kind of wondering in the back of their mind, is somebody a Skrull? Like, are there any left? Who can I trust? There's all these friendships and relationships broken and fractured over it, but Metal doesn't seem to have that going on. I mean, even the Justice League No Justice, it just led into the next Justice League series, but Batman's still getting married. He's been engaged to fucking Catwoman for 30 issues or something, and it's like everyone's ongoing lives have not changed one iota. They're still doing their thing. So
Right.
What was really the purpose of all of this?
Just to set up another event, so the event affected an event, which affected an event, whereas it didn't affect the individual people, which it should.
Right. I mean, that's kind of the whole point, right? The universe needs to be shaken up as a whole. Everyone should be dealing with the consequences of said event.
Yeah, and also, I mean, not even just after, like during too.
During,
like,
yeah.
Like if you're gonna sell me on this big, huge DC event, and you have Batman Lost, why in the Batman ongoing title is Batman going and getting engaged?
Yeah, he's not lost.
Yeah, he's
Batman-
not lost.
Batman
he's like
was found. He was found.
He's not lost. He's happily getting engaged over there. He's
He's lost in the ways of marriage.
Yeah,
It's weird. It's a
maybe
weird...
Metal is just a huge. Actually, maybe we've been viewing Metal wrong. Maybe Metal is just a huge metaphor for marriage.
Oh,
Could
God.
be. You
That-
might
You're
have
breaking
solved the
that
puzzle.
source wall.
broke that
and,
source wall, dude. It's like-
man.
I don't even know a good metaphor for it right now. I don't know. It's just like, I don't know, like taking
You're
the
the opposite of
virginity or
Trump
something.
right here. He's
know.
building the wall, you're tearing it down.
I know.
But now I completely lost what I was going to say, you fuckers.
You're welcome.
But no, I think, again, like if I'm going back to Civil War, because to me that's one of the most successful events that I've ever read, right? And when I think about the Amazing Spider-Man tie-ins to Civil War, it didn't feel like this weird outlier, because like it seemed like everything that was leading up to Civil War, his arc was building towards it. Then while he was dealing with Civil War, there are specific issues while Civil War is going on that he's dealing with what's going on in Civil War, and it matches up with the event. And then after Civil War is over and his line continues, his ongoing series continues, it's now dealing with the fallout of Civil War. That's the kind of thing I expect, but it's a weird catch-22 because as a reader, maybe I don't want this event to affect my ongoing series. I just want to read my Aquaman. I want to read my Green Arrow or my Hal Jordan the Green Lantern Corps. But then it's like, what's the point of the event then? If if everyone stays the same and they're not affected by this event, what was the point of the event? I don't know how to explain it because I understand both sides of it, but I think
Right.
you got to take a stance on the fence. You got to decide, look, this Dark Knight's Metal, it's going to change the whole universe as a whole. Everyone's going to be affected by this. Or this event is just kind of its own thing, kind of like maybe Original Sin was for Marvel, where, yeah, it happened, but there weren't a whole lot of tie-ins, there weren't a whole lot of people that were affected by it. It affected probably Thor and Nick Fury the most, but, that's it.
Well, like Secret Wars, the most recent Secret Wars, like it affected the whole Marvel universe. Like, I mean, in the comic books, all their ongoing titles, they had, the event happening in those titles, and
they got renumbered.
Everybody got renumbered afterwards. Like those titles didn't come back until after they were like everything was fixed and it was renumbered, well, somewhat fixed, because you still got some stuff that's affecting, which you even have storylines right now that's going on about like Reed and Sue. Are they dead? Are they missing? They don't know. There's the Thing and Human Torch is trying to find them. Yeah. So I mean, that's another example of a good way, where it kind of does affect
like
it. But
Miles and Spider-Man.
Or Miles and Spider-Man. Yeah. The one thing that I do remember when Secret Wars did come out, there was a lot of people who were really upset that their ongoing title that they were really enjoying is now being affected by this big event, and some of them didn't really care. A lot of people didn't like the event, and a lot of people didn't like the tie-ins that came in with that event, which they weren't really tie-ins, they were just like other series, so you didn't just have to read just that. But
I think, like I said, communication is key, so it is a catch-22. But at the same time, as a reader in the comic industry, you have to accept that events are going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, if they have communication and they talk to the main characters that it's going to involve, the team writing those characters, get their stories and go, okay, here's our story for the event. If you can sprinkle in a little thing here and there, if you can find this is what we need Spider-Man to do at some point in his journey on this, we'll give you 20 issues. Make a milestone for every ongoing series that's going to affect. Here's where you need stuff to happen because we're going to start changing things. it's going to affect your series.
Yeah, or
as long as there's communication.
Yeah, if you tell your writers, like, look, hey, you can do what you want, but I just need you to build to this character beat, okay?
Right.
Like, I need you to build towards Spider-Man unmasking himself and now his identity is public.
Right.
Write whatever you need to get to that point, but build towards it, you
Right.
know, and then have a plan for how his life goes after that. Obviously, Dan Slott's plan kind of ran out. Then we got Brand New Day, but hey, at least all the tie-ins and things that kind of happened afterwards felt like Spider-Man actually dealt with Civil War, like it actually happened, you know? Another one that kind of comes to mind is actually Infinity, the newest Infinity that came out around 2015. There were a lot of tie-ins to that. No, I don't feel like I got the full story in the 6 issues, but if I was collecting the Avengers titles that tied in with it, then I got the full, well-rounded story, and it affected all those people within it. But again, it wasn't self-contained to just the 6 issues of Infinity, which is, to me, a bit of a detriment to that series' impact. But now they have that giant, big trade paperback of it for $50, and you can get it all, and it's all chronologically put together. It's a great read. So,
Infinity Gauntlet, I mean, obviously, I don't really remember when it was coming out, or when it was like how they were
92.
but there was some tie-ins, but it mostly seemed like they were Silver Surfer. And from what I've read, I feel like you don't really need to read those tie-ins.
No.
They're nice little touches. There's also Thanos Quest that happens beforehand, which is like 4 issues. They're nice little things that kind of make the story a little bit sweeter. But you can still read Infinity Gauntlet by itself,
get the whole story,
and still get the gist.
Yeah.
Silver Surfer knows Thanos is coming. He warns Doctor Strange. Here we go.
Yeah. The next con that we've got is that you can oversaturate the market with events, and we've seen Marvel and DC both be culprits of this.
Oh, yeah.
Most recently, it's been DC, but Marvel has done it plenty of times too. Where you had Axis, you had AVX, you had IVX, you had Siege, you had,
Secret Wars.
Yeah, you had all this stuff happening.
Spider-Verse.
In the span of like 2 years. Spider Island thing.
Island.
All that stuff was happening in the span of like a year or two, and it's like, just, give me some room to fucking breathe here. You just keep fucking throwing these characters into giant events, and I don't really get the feel that I'm getting to know this character. I'm watching him do his own thing. I'm just waiting for the next event so he can interact and react to all this stuff. I kind of just want to read an ongoing character story.
I agree. It's almost as if like winning the lottery. You win it one time, it's really exciting, and the very next day, if you win the lottery, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, you're kind of like, okay, I'm just getting money. You're not excited by it anymore.
I think that's a bad example. I think everyone's happy to win money.
They're happy to win money, but I
yeah.
feel like at a certain, it's not that rush, that excitement the first time you do it. So if you have an event every other week or every month, you're kind of like, it's an event, but do I really want to invest in this event because you just had one? Even if it leaves a sour taste in your mouth, like you guys don't like Metal, were you guys then inclined to go out and get No Justice?
No.
So it
I
leaves
didn't
a bad
actually even
taste.
finish reading that series.
Right, and it's right after it, so you guys weren't inclined, and because it left a bad taste. Now, if they had left a year, 2 years, and then No Justice had come out, maybe you guys would have been a little more inclined to go, okay, they've kind of, as you like to say, cleansed my palate of it. Yeah. I might now read No Justice.
Well, another good example of that, I like how I always start into my, and like in little bits, Civil War 2 and then Secret Empire. You can tell that Marvel was trying to get you like amped up for Secret Empire, because in Civil War 2 you have it where the Inhuman that they're like the whole thing is caused by shows everybody a glimpse. He doesn't mean to, but shows everybody a glimpse that Miles Morales, Spider-Man, kills Captain America, and you kind of go, okay, well, that's just random. Yeah, and then right after that ends, it doesn't. Yeah, right after that happens, give it a couple of months, and then boom, Secret Empire hits. And in Secret Empire, you're going, okay, well, this is where it is because Cap's Hydra, so Miles is going. And like, it's just to me. I don't know about most people. To me, I just felt like that was cheaply laid out, and also you overdid the events.
Right, and it's. I mean, again, that just happened, which was Dark Knight's Metal was used as a setup to set up No Justice, which is just a setup to set up the new Justice League. So it's like, not only are you oversaturating the market, but you're not even telling complete stories anymore, because you're using one story as a gimmick to set up another story, which then you come to find out is another gimmick to just set up an ongoing Justice League series. It's like, come on, aren't these events, when you start to throw so many out, they all start to lose their weight, they start to lose their worth to us. We start to catch on that, all right, you're just going to keep pushing this shit out, you're going to move on, which is why we're now sitting on issues of No Justice now, because people, they wised up, the whole gimmick of one event just to set up another event, It used to be that there was an event maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years. Now we're getting them multiple times a year. Within, God, who knows what, 3 months, we got the End of Metal, then No Justice, and Doomsday Clock all running concurrently. It's like there's just too much shit going on,
and none of it seems to, like, except for No Justice, none of it seems to really be canon with what's going on with the rest of the story, like with the rest of the ongoing series.
Yeah, if you're reading Justice League, maybe it is, but
the new Titan special definitely is.
Yeah, and that's, to me, the new Titan special that just came out this week is the only one that seems to actually have a direct effect, or is directly affected by the
source wall being
right, by the No Justice and Metal stuff. But other than that, everyone else seems to be saying the same. And
Green Arrow's still doing his thing.
Batman's still getting married. Superman's still Bendising and
yeah. Bendis is arting.
Yeah,
so Man of Steel right now.
Yeah, and then again, another detriment to this is that you set up these new characters that maybe the whole idea behind your event was to either kill off a character or bring in new characters, the way Metal's tried to bring in all these new DC heroes. But then, you don't garner any interest for these new heroes, and now we as retailers are like left in the dark, like, how many of this shit should I order? You didn't introduce any of these people in Metal. Now I have no idea how many of these people have these individual titles and how many issues of these individual titles I need to be ordering, because I have no idea if there's any vested interest in them.
And it's unfortunate because some of the Metal heroes, the new age of heroes, I've read a few of them, and the ones I've read, there may be one or two that are actually decent, but they're still sitting on the shelf because everybody's kind of given up on it, because they're, as we said, oversaturating.
Or with deaths, you don't keep them dead. Like with Barry, when he died, he was gone for 2 decades. And now,
Secret Empire,
we have the death of Bruce.
Widow.
Or no, that was Civil War II.
Yeah.
Is death of Bruce Banner, and then and also Rhodes, and then you have the death of Black Widow in Secret Empire, but it's been like probably less than a month of Secret Empire. They already had a version of Black Widow back.
Yeah.
And then it's been probably
Rhodey's
about
back,
a year.
Bruce is back. Yeah.
Bruce is back. Rhodey's back. There's no consequences. It's like you see these people die and you kind of go, well, they'll be back now. I already know they'll be back.
Right.
Like when Black Widow died, I was like, she's not dead. She'll be back, and like
it didn't affect me.
And then like a month later, Tales of Suspense comes out, and it's like, oh, so Black Widow isn't dead.
Okay. See, and that's unfortunate because it should have a huge, heavy feeling on us when some of our favorite characters die. But when you read it and you go, they'll be back in a couple of months, it takes away the entire effect of the story that they tried to set up.
Or it's like you kill off Wolverine, and granted, he's been dead for a few years now, but you got Old Man Logan there as your substitute.
Right.
I get you found yourself a loophole, but I don't really feel that Logan and Wolverine is missing from this universe. Like,
You're not having Logan
I don't
to draw.
miss him.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. You're not giving me a reason. I mean, like, at least with, like, Barry and Wally, it's like you can argue and say, like, okay, well, Wally takes over for Flash, so we never really lose a Flash. And that's true. But Wally is very different than Barry. And he's written very different from Barry. And his problems are a lot different than what Barry's problems are. So you still miss Barry. Because
the ghost of Barry, in some sense of the word, is still kind of looming over that title. Like we talked about.
Yeah.
But Wally's still trying to, like, can I live up to being Flash? Can I be Barry? Can I be as good as Barry? Like, even though Barry's dead, his presence is still felt because it's like he's missing from the universe. Wolverine, there's not a single person going, man, I really miss Logan. Like, I wish he were here. He would know what to do, kind of thing.
For real though, like nobody did that. Like I think Deadpool had one issue where he did that.
Yeah,
like,
but it's made me realize that, like, one, Logan really has no best friend or real friend in this universe other than Nightcrawler, who never gets enough attention anyway. And then, is this guy really a hero? Like, do any of his peers consider him a hero? Because no one seems to really care that he's dead.
So it's basically, if the universe doesn't care, why should I?
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, yeah. That's what a lot of these deaths, I mean, like, it doesn't seem like nothing, like,
The last death,
nothing really affects anything.
The last death that got me was back in 2007 after Civil War ended and they killed off Captain America. I mean, that panel of him shot in the chest on the courthouse steps was literally in USA Today. Like, I have that newspaper clipping because I thought, oh my God, I can't believe they killed off Captain America. Granted, like, a year and a half later, they brought him back with the most absurd bullshit ever. fine. But like that was the last death that hit me because I really thought like, dude, that's the end of Steve Rogers as Captain America. Like, there's no more. Bucky's now taken over and all this stuff, and that did hit me. But that was also back when I wasn't as wise to the shtick as I am now too.
Have they brought Rick Jones back yet?
Yeah, well, not from Secret Empire, no.
Yeah.
Another one though too. Actually, speaking about events, building up events, actually Assault on Pleasant Hill, the standoff stuff that went really under the radar is actually everything that set up that's what the first domino that fell to set up Secret Empire, which granted was probably put out 2 years before Secret Empire. So there was setup to it, but it's like, that thing was also spread across multiple titles. Like, I had to get, like, Champions, and I had to get something I would never get, which is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and then there's, like, Alpha and Omega issues and an Avengers tie-in and all this shit. And I'm just like, couldn't you just put up, like, an Assault on Pleasant Hill standoff thing? Just put out a little mini-series of it, or, but whatever. All right, and then so that was our oversaturation. And then the last thing we've got as far as cons go is this recycling of events and event titles. It can cause confusion, and it can feel like there are really no new ideas, no fresh ideas coming from these publishers, right? Like, there are at least 3 different Secret Wars or Secret War. There's all these different Infinity events. There's all these different Crises events from DC. It's like, us as retailers, when we're trying to explain Secret Wars, we have to make sure we reference which one from which year and what it did in order to be able to like talk about it and sell it to people. Or if you're talking about the Crises events on from DC, it's like there's Crisis on Infinite Earths, Infinite Crisis, Identity Crisis, Final Crisis. Like, all this shit happened. Like, all right, hold on. So in order to explain, Final Crisis, let me explain Crisis on Infinite Earths, Infinite Crisis, Identity Crisis. Let me explain all this shit.
Okay, I'm just going to lay this all out for all our listeners. The only Crisis that you should probably be reading is Identity Crisis. It's the only one worth reading.
Crisis on Infinite Earths is worth reading because of the history behind it.
That's true.
And
but Identity Crisis is better.
It's true, but it also did come out like 15, 20 years after. So.
Identity Crisis.
Again,
pick it up at your local comic book shops.
Reader.
It does confuse the reader.
Do it.
Yeah.
Even if you're like, man, Secret Wars would be a great title for this. Come up with something else. And
there's also Secret Wars 2. I forgot about that.
Right.
There's also Secret Wars 2.
Yeah.
So
the one that I actually caught today and I completely forgot about is there's a Green Lantern or Hal Jordan Rebirth.
Oh yeah.
And then there's the Rebirth Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps.
Well, there's also the Flash Rebirth, and now Rebirth
and
Flash.
It's weird
and
when
I think
you go
there's
back.
a Superman, isn't there?
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me.
I would say Superman has every subtitle under the sun. He's got Secret Identity, Secret Origin, all this other shit.
Would you say under the red sun?
Under the yellow sun. He's super powered, bro.
I was going to say red sun.
I got you. Red Sun.
You got it. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
The Elseworld title.
Yes,
but yeah, so when you keep recycling these events and we keep seeing the same titles on these events over and over, we're numb to it, It's like, hold on, you're doing another Infinity, like they're about to do another Infinity Wars.
Civil War.
Yeah, they're doing another Infinity Wars. We just had, I know Infinity Wars, I know Infinity Gauntlet. We just had Avengers Infinity War. Now you're putting on an Infinity Wars title with Infinity Countdown leading up to that. There's all this Infinity shit. I don't care anymore, and we are not seeing a lot of people picking up Infinity Countdown because everyone's like, where, there's just so much. There's just so much of it, and it can't really be that much different than the shit I've already read or that I already know about, so what's really the point?
Well, I mean, another good example, Civil War 2. I mean, it wasn't even just the fact that they recycled the name, but the premise was almost not the premise was almost exactly the same, but it was the events that happened inside that event was almost exactly like the events. Yeah. I mean, the way it ends is exactly the way that Civil War ends.
And I'll tell you this too, as somebody who is Team Iron Man in the original Civil War, it was so thinly veiled for me how much they were trying to redeem Tony Stark in that. So it's like Carol Danvers is now the bad guy, and Tony Stark is who you should be agreeing with. He's your Captain America in this scenario. I was like, I was Team Stark in the first one. I'm not Team Carol in this one just because I know what you're doing with Tony Stark. But we do talk often about how dumb some collectors are, some readers are, just the general populace in general is kind of dumb. Here, they're smart. Readers are smart, collectors are smart. They know when something's just being rehashed and being recycled because of popularity, or they're capitalizing on a title that they know is popular. You got to come up with something new, something fresh, because you're not going to keep getting away with recycling this stuff. I think we're seeing that with Infinity Countdown right now. Infinity Countdown's not selling that well. No one gives a shit.
It's not selling that well. I mean, the first issue obviously did pretty well. We ordered way too many copies of it. But, like, now they're doing all these, like, they spent forever on the countdown, and they're still on the countdown, and now they're finally starting to do these spin-off books that are tie-ins, and nobody's picking those up.
No, I mean, we ordered literally 3 of the Captain Marvel ones. I don't think we had a single person ask about, oh, where's this Infinity Countdown tie-in? You know? No one cared. There's Darkhawk ones. Nobody cares.
Which I will throw out there, though. There was a Daredevil one that was great.
Yeah, but again, not enough people cared because no one cares about Infinity Countdown. It just, everyone knows, oh, it's the Infinity Stones again. Right. Thanos is probably coming with them. I mean, who cares? I've read this before.
I'll give props just one time in this podcast for the DC fans listening. At least with Metal and Doomsday Clock, it's a different name, so there's no confusion. So when they go into it, Doomsday Clock, is going to be Watchmen related. And it's going to be DC related because it's the DC publishing house putting it out. But it's different enough that I'm not going, crap, is there another Doomsday Clock from 1974 that I should be reading? Or you just know this is the title that I need to read.
Yeah, I mean, just rebrand it. Slap a different label on it, you know what I mean? This isn't Sunkiss, this is Squirt.
Use different verbiage and diction. I mean? Be smart. You are writers. Be smart.
Civil War 2, call it, Carol disagrees with Tony.
I'm going to tell you this.
I know I'm not paid to make titles.
I'm going to tell Marvel one thing. Stop using the word wars in your fucking events. Just stop with the wars.
And secret.
Yeah.
Man. They use secret all over the place.
Just find a different name for it.
And it's not a secret because they keep doing it.
Well, not only that, the only real secret war, if you ask me, was the one that Bendis wrote because nobody knew. I mean, that was a very covert operation. Everything else is just way out there in the public. Everyone knows what the fuck's happening.
Caps Hydra, everybody's just like, hey, Caps Hydra, I'm join. Like, Hail Hydra.
Just find just, you're going to do an event. One, make it something brand new. Make it something we haven't seen before. And for Christ's sake, just do not label it something that we've already know about,
See, one thing, I'll badmouth Secret Empire because I didn't like it. But the one thing I will give them is that they did take a risk at least because they did something different. They took a character that was everybody hated it.
You're talking about the Boy Scout of the Marvel Universe.
And you made him the bad guy. Like that, I mean, kudos to you guys for doing it. Was it well executed? No. But
the brass ones it took you to at least try and
allow
do it.
That. Yeah. I mean, you won't allow Frank Miller to kill off Black Widow, so he has to create Elektra. But boy, you would let them take Captain Marvel and make him a freaking Nazi.
Captain America.
Oh, yeah, Captain America.
Yeah.
I'm getting too excited.
That actually, I think, goes back to our previous podcast, taking a risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the solutions, and I think we can get right into it. And I'm actually going to let Dallas MC the solution.
I'm gonna be the narrator. Yeah. So,
can you say it like Morgan Freeman before you start?
I don't think I can do Morgan Freeman.
Just try it.
I don't want to try it live.
These are my solutions for
all right, you want to narrate
these events.
Okay. So, you guys bring up some good ones that actually weren't in our solutions, the last few points you had, so that's a nice segue. So, self-contained events is the first one we're going to talk about. Now, we like events, as we said. We like to see our favorite characters interact. But when it's a self-contained story like Josh brought up when we were talking about it, Flash Wars, and I brought up The Amazing Spider-Man, the recent arc, it's an event within that person's title, so it's not this huge, epic, world-ending thing that doesn't have any ripple effect. It's in our favorite title, so it may not affect, if you're reading Green Arrow, it may not affect it, it may not upset you. So you do focus more on these as opposed to big world-ending events.
Sometimes the more intimate conflicts are the more interesting ones to read. So, with the Flash Wars or the New Amazing Spider-Man, you're right, it doesn't need to be a universe-threatening or a world-shattering event for it to have impact. Sometimes it just needs to literally break that character's world. Right. And what is more important than anything else to Spider-Man? It's his family and his friends. If you're going to threaten them and fuck them up, kill them, that to me is way more interesting than, Cap is Hydra.
He's driven by compassion.
He's such a dick.
Going back to our Lantern debate, if you want to check out that podcast.
Yeah, link in the description. Probably not. I'll forget about it.
Probably. But I mean, even the Spider-Man one, since we're talking about, that's one of my favorite modern story arcs in general, just because it truly does show the nature of the character. Just like you actually turned me on to Daredevil's Born Again. It was a self-contained thing, and it stripped him away. It wasn't this world-ending thing. It was just his story, his world ending, not the entire world, his world ending. And it really pushes our characters that we love to the limits, and it just makes for a better story. And when they're used sparingly, as in big events, when they're used sparingly, they have more impact. And these individual events have impact on our individual likes.
Right, because I mean, you can consider it an event because if you're anticipating it and it's being built up, even if it is just in a single ongoing series, to us that's an event. That's something for us to look forward to and for us to latch our teeth into and go like, I'm looking forward to this issue and I can't wait to get the next one. And I can't wait to see how this resolves itself.
The best thing about self-contained events is also you still get everything that you would have as what we had for pros. Within those, you get deaths, you can add new characters, you get character growth, you can still have interactions with other characters.
I would say in Amazing Spider-Man, you have Venom. It doesn't need to affect his ongoing Venom series because it's not like this is taking place over weeks and months.
Right, it's a short brief
Right, this
thing.
is just like a single day in the life. I mean,
Right.
why can't Venom take a break from his ongoing series real quick to appear in this? I can believe that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So next point, which we've addressed several times, so we may not discuss as long, is use sparingly. Don't come out and do an event, as we said, DC and Marvel specifically have done a lot in the last few years, rebranding, renaming, new events over and over and over. If you use them sparingly, they have more impact on us as readers, like leaving Barry dead for 2 decades. That left a big impact on Flash fans.
Yep.
They were like, shit, this is my favorite character and he's dead, and you actually felt the emotion of a character death, not as you said with Black Widow, shit, she'll be back, it'll be alright, I don't care. And when we, as readers, we go into these stories for emotions and these, oh shit, that was so cool, dude, look at this, because we like this communication, because we are a community. I mean, The Amazing Spider-Man, going back to it, we were talking about how amazing it was, just like, dude, did you see that 2 panel right here, and like showing each other and freaking out about it. So use them sparingly so they have more emotional impact.
Right. I mean, an event should be used sparingly. It's like, I mean, if you want to take it or liken it to the movie industry, I mean, look at Avengers Infinity War. The seeds for that were sown all throughout Phase 1, and then Avengers 1 in 2012, we get our first quick glimpse of Thanos. That doesn't pay itself off until 2018. You got 6 years in between of just anticipation and build-up and getting us all excited about it. That's what an event is. To me, Avengers Infinity War was an event film. And if you want to do that in comic books, build it up, tease us. But, I mean, when you give it to us multiple times a year, no one cares anymore.
Right, and talking about the movie specifically, if you had Infinity War 1, 2, 3 all in the same year, I feel like there would be superhero fatigue with Avengers Infinity War.
Absolutely.
Whereas like you said, we had this huge build-up in these solo movies, so correlating that back to our solo titles, communication, build this up, sprinkle little things here and there.
I like seeing the Infinity Gauntlet in Thor 1, just for a quick glimpse.
Right.
If you caught it, you caught it, but again, it's putting the pieces in place.
It's these long payoffs that we as readers enjoy.
Right. So, yeah.
Next one is make it matter / plan it out.
Yes.
So communication, as I've said several times, is key. So make a plan, set it out. This is the event we want. These are the characters we have. And now we need to contact this team, this team, this team, this team, doing the writing for this. Tell them our plans and set it in motion.
I completely agree. I mean, this is something that you do need to plan out. When you talk about something like Avengers versus X-Men, that didn't feel planned out. That felt like a complete gimmick. Like, hey, Civil War did really well. We had our heroes versus our heroes. Why don't we take the superhero community and put them against the mutant community and just see how it all plays out? Aside from some beautiful Jim Chung covers, that fucking thing fell on its face. Nobody likes Avengers versus X-Men. You didn't plan it out, and afterwards it really had very few repercussions.
Right.
But this is something, if you're going to do an event, make sure it has lasting impact and lasting repercussions, because that's the way you get readers interested. Because I want to see my characters go through these trials and tribulations. I want to see what happens when Spider-Man unmasks himself on national TV and the way he has to deal with that afterwards. And it's a complete deconstruction of everything we've known for the past 50 years of this character, which is to keep his identity a secret, to protect the people he loves, because that's what's most important to him. Now he's jeopardized that. I gotta see how that plays out. That to me felt intricately planned, and it made for an amazing read.
Took a risk.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, another thing from AVX, I just realized this because we're talking about deaths and everything. In AVX, you do have the death of Xavier, and they didn't bring him back until just recently.
And he's not even actually fully back.
And he's not even fully back. That was That's taking a pretty big risk in
Yeah,
AVX.
but here's the thing: it's not the first time Professor X has been killed off in the comic books
Hey,
either.
here's
so
the thing: Cap died a bunch of times.
I honestly can't dispute that, but I can't also recall any other times he's been.
I mean,
killed
they
off.
thought he was dead when he was frozen.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, but
Like, I mean, come on, how many
just a
times?
that's a big part of his origin, you know. But anyway, no.
But,
yeah, plan it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you read Secret Empire, if you read Civil War II, to me, it sounded like somebody had a really cool idea and had 2 issues planned out, and then once they start going down the road, they're kind of like, I don't know how to end this. Yeah, so you get this really bad taste in your mouth with that. It's Secret Empire, to me, it felt like they had this idea. It's like, okay, so we're going to make Cap Hydra, here we go, and then the rest of it kind of felt scattered. Same with Metal. I feel like it was very scattered. It wasn't. I feel like they had some kind of plan, but it wasn't really planned out very well.
Well, it's not only that, but like some of these issues were being, you know, released before the end of Metal, and it's like, well, now I know everything's going to be okay because here are these comic books coming out where everyone says Metal ended and it's fine, but the last issue of Metal hasn't come out, you know, so it's not planned out very well. But the other thing I was going to say is, before we get to I think this is one of our next solutions, is that if you're going to have an event that year, you better make sure that's the best event and make it the only event. When you've got ideas for 2, 3, 4 events that year, scrap those other ones. Focus on the one you think is the best chance of telling the best story.
I think the best thing to actually liken the comic book industry and in terms of events is to the movie industry between Marvel and DC. With Infinity War, you had, 20 years? 10 years set up? 10 years set up. And you had, let's say, 18 debatably, there's a few in there that were financially successful. There were a few that were right on the cusp of being financially successful, whereas DC, you had one financially successful movie in terms of profit, and then they put out Justice League, and you saw the numbers between them. And the comic book industry is the same way. If you just put it on an event with no setup, the numbers may be high for a little bit, but issue 2, 3, 4, you'll see drop-off, where if this has been set up, you might see consistent numbers 1 through 6 or 8 or 10 or 12.
Or like Civil War, all 7 issues sold out. I think there were 4. It went into like 4th or 5th printings of every issue.
Sometimes also with like these events, the problem is like you can tell they're not really well planned out. Not just with the writing and with how they release the books and everything, but mostly with how they release the books. So like Doomsday Clock right now, they release every 2 months.
Yeah.
And that is horrible for an event because you're making that event, you're trying to milk that event for over a year, and you're making people fall off of it. When you should just plan it all out and have it just short, small, and contained. Because the other thing too is with the Doomsday Clock, it's 12 issues. That ain't an event. That's not an event. That's a series.
It's a mini-series.
That's a mini-series. And then even then, that shouldn't take that long. You shouldn't take that long to put it all out. So another solution would be make sure that when you place your seeds out, and you let everything grow. But when that event's ready, you boost that thing out and you do like at least 6 to 7 issues max. Right. Don't sit there and milk it for 10, 12 issues. That's too much.
That's literally trying to capitalize on the name of the event itself.
Exactly.
So the next point, and we've kind of discussed this, make sure the events affect the character's solo titles without becoming must-read tie-ins. So like Batman Lost, it didn't have any effect on the actual Batman series, and it became a quote-unquote, to the reader walking in, a must-read title when it really wasn't. Yeah. Because you read Batman and it has no effect. So make sure it has some sort of lasting effect, and that these tie-ins don't become must-reads. Like literally carry it over into the solo titles.
Yeah, the main thing is I don't feel like, me personally, I don't feel like everything has to be tied in to the universe where it's must-read tie-ins. But if you're going to have Batman Lost, then why am I still reading Batman right now and he's like getting married? Like it makes it very confusing to the reader, and it makes you almost feel that Metal is an Elseworlds tale, or the ongoing series that I've been reading is not even actually canon within the universe. It makes it very confusing. So I do think that you still have to have your characters acknowledge that what this event is doing is still going on.
Right.
Civil War is a great example. During and after that Civil War affected all the titles. They were, the characters were either in hiding, or they had to start being in hiding, or there was an issue where they had to sit here and contemplate: do I want to register? Do I not want to register? It still follows it, but you don't need to read it. It doesn't have to be a tie-in, but if it's going to be an event that changes the whole world of this universe, then it needs to show some kind of spark in each title.
And there's even easy fixes, specifically talking about Batman Lost. While he's gone, just have what they call a filler issue where Catwoman's looking for Batman. Literally all you have to do. One issue.
Bat Family's looking for Batman.
Right, one issue, maybe 2 issues, span it a little bit longer.
Or had you planned it out right, this whole thing with Metal is actually what breaks up Batman and Catwoman, and they never actually do get married. I mean, that can be the fallout of that. You know, Batman seemed to be getting his life in order. He's going to lead more of a traditional lifestyle, and then something like Metal happens, and he realizes that he can't lead a traditional lifestyle. He can't marry Catwoman because of everything that happened here. You know, he realizes his life is never going to be the same. Bring it up, make it philosophical, make it something that we as the readers can connect ourselves to, because there's nothing that happened in Metal that I feel like I could connect to, I could latch onto, I could take a point of view or a stance on. You know, it's just, here's this event, shit's happening, it's weird
Bunch
looking,
of cool colors, and we're gonna give you weird Batmans.
great covers, but here's the thing, I never felt connected to any of that. When it came to Civil War, it made me sit back, like, how do I feel about superhero registration? Like, yeah, of course it's fake, it's not real, but this felt so much grounded into the real world.
Right.
I had to sit back and take a step and go, who do I agree with on this issue? Or who do I agree with, you know, on the stance here? Do I think that superheroes should register? No, I don't personally think that, but I can see why in the world we live in today, it would be an almost absolute necessity, right? So I have to disagree with Cap. And as much as I love Cap and as much as it tore me up to kind of have to side with Stark, I understood the necessity for the superhero registration, and it made me more invested in that series to see how it's going to play out, because I mean, you bring up something that is in the superhero world a philosophical debate. There's nothing that happens in things like Metal and Doomsday Clock that makes me go, yeah, how would I feel about this? How would I feel if I were in the place of Steve Rogers, or if I were in the place of Peter Parker or Tony Stark? You know, so that to me is just a well-crafted series, and what happens and everything that comes out of it is just a byproduct of that, because it was so well thought out.
Right.
If I remember correctly, during the Batman title, I can't remember if it was during Metal or right before Metal, there was an issue where the Bat Family goes looking for Batman. But it's not that he's lost with Metal; it's that he's out doing something with Catwoman after he proposed to her.
Doing something.
Yeah, doing something somewhere. But I mean, another good example. I mean, it didn't feel grounded to the point that. Do you remember that there was a guy that the Joker or the Batman Who Laughs had hostage throughout Metal? We never find out who that guy is. That they show him multiple times
he's like on
being
a
held
leash or
hostage.
something?
He has his face wrapped up. See what I'm saying? There's a guy held hostage. We still do not know who it is, and we don't care.
Yeah, and I mean, leads to, or even an earlier issue, which is either the casting or the Forge, where I think it's Green Lantern and Mr. Terrific, maybe.
Second one, it's Green Lantern and Duke Thomas.
Duke Thomas, and they find Joker
downstairs
down in
cave.
Batman's cave. That never came back into play. Who gave a shit? Like, what was that all about?
Yeah.
There are a lot of unresolved things in certain events.
But it just speaks back to this doesn't feel planned out,
Right.
and there are no repercussions. I mean, for years since Rebirth started, we've been hearing about this theory of 3 Jokers too. When the fuck is that coming into play? You know, all this stuff, it just doesn't feel planned out. It feels reactionary,
Right.
and that's what I think Secret Empire ended up being. Is it was reactionary. There's so many angry fanboys about that's not my Cap. # not my Cap. My Cap would never be a Nazi. So I think the way Secret Empire ended the way it did because of fan backlash and reaction.
Yeah. We were talking about like the whole Rebirth thing. The only title that actually still referenced the idea of rebirth. Everybody else completely ignores it. All the other titles completely ignore it. The only title that actually still acknowledges it is The Flash.
Well, Titans too.
And Titans too.
Because
but
of
mostly
Wally.
because of Wally. Because
Yeah.
Wally, nobody remembers him.
Yeah, and he is really the only thread still being woven into the DC Rebirth stuff to make us remember that Rebirth even happened.
Or even care about Rebirth and find out what's going on.
Yeah, if it wasn't for so many good ongoing titles, I don't really see the need for Rebirth. And you could have just kept the New 52 shit going on, and this is just the natural progression of that. But anyway,
But going back to your Civil War point, it sparked a debate amongst the community where it
It
literally
did.
became Team Cap or Team Iron Man, and you'd walk in and actually discuss, which team you were. And I mean, Civil War may be a bad example, not in terms of this, just because it has a political thing behind it. But there's other comic books where you debate amongst things, and that's honestly one of the best things about comics is great stories and conversations.
Yeah, give us something to latch onto, because
Right.
I don't want to have the same perspective as you, because here's the thing, with something like Dark Knight's Metal, I mean, I know like, we keep beating this fucking horse, I'm sorry, but it's like...
Hey, I praised it once, that's enough.
Okay,
Go
but
on.
with Dark Knight's Metal, there's nothing for me to have a different opinion on than you, as far as what's happening in the story and how I feel about it,
Right.
other than I just think it's bad. Because we're kind of, as the reader, we're not given a chance to be subjective. Like, we have to maintain a distance and an almost like omniscient point of view. Whereas Marvel Civil War kind of forced you to take a stance and be subjective and kind of insert yourself into this series. You know what I mean? I'm not given an omniscient point of view anymore. I become a part of the story myself because I feel like I have to take a stance. But that's just harkening back to the idea that there's just nothing for us to grab onto. You know, there's no philosophical debate, there's no existential crisis out there that speaks to the humanity in us. You know, so if you're gonna make an event, make it earth-shattering, man. Like, not in the sense that the world is at stake, because in Civil War, the Earth really isn't at stake. It's the superhero community.
Right.
It's the characters that we love that are potentially at risk here. And I think that's something that the events need to focus more on. And instead of the big gimmicky stuff, it needs to be the stuff that makes me as the reader go, I have to know how this ends because I'm so invested in these characters, and that's who the threat is against right now.
And you can't really converse about metal either. There's like, if somebody can come here and discuss with me about metal and tell me about the event and their favorite points about the event and what the causes were and the effects, tell me, because I still do not understand.
Here's the problem with Dark Knight's Metal. You can't even give me a coherent summary of what happened in
Right?
that. So, just mess. It was just a mess. It was messy. You know, it was a wasted event. Again, like I've said so many times, it was just cool covers.
I'll save the DC fans from crying. I'll change the point real quick.
Okay.
And it could just be me, but when I read comic book superheroes, I don't go into it. Like, for me personally, Superman's not my favorite character because I don't see a lot of traits within him that I see in myself. So when I read, like, Batman or Spider-Man, I see a lot of traits within myself that I like to these characters, and that's why I read them. And I'm assuming you guys feel the same way at times with certain
Absolutely,
characters.
yeah.
And when you completely just disregard that and just make it all about money and events and you lose the personality in it, it loses all emotional effects for us as readers.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man, Red Goblin event, I think that's in Flash Wars. Granted, it hasn't finished yet and it's in the middle of it, but I think that's one of the reasons why these self-contained events are so big, because it's dealing with your favorite character.
Right.
You can relate, and then obviously if it's your favorite character, there's a reason why it's your favorite character. Most of the time it's because you can relate to him in some kind of
And you're
aspect.
invested in that character.
And you're invested in that character. You are, like, if something was to kind of happen to that character, or you're afraid something could happen to that character, you're going to be scared. And you just don't get that with some of these events.
No. Because
It's basically relating it to a Michael Bay film. You go into it for explosions.
you're
You're not going into it for story.
Most events are about as hollow as a Transformers film.
Basically.
That's a good way of putting
You're
it.
going into it for explosions, not a great story and emotion.
No, you're there for the spectacle.
Basically.
Yeah.
So, moving on. This one's as a retailer.
Yep.
I know you guys have said sometimes when you go to order on your form list, the tie-ins or the main issues aren't grouped with the actual event.
Or we just don't even know it is a tie-in
Right.
until we get it. Yeah.
So, I mean, even as a customer, because I can't speak as a retailer, when you come in, and I know there have been a few people that come in like, hey, did you get this specific tie-in issue? And you guys are like, that's a tie-in issue because you guys weren't told, and like it doesn't say on the website, it doesn't let you know.
Right.
And it's a detriment to you guys because even if it is a tie-in and you don't know and you order 2 or 3 copies and 16 people come in because it's a tie-in, you don't know, and as you said, you go to order them and they're either behind on back order or they're just done printing it and going to second and third printings.
Right. So my solution here would be to, if you're going to put out an event, right, on my order form, I need to see maybe the header saying Dark Knight's Metal. And everything that's going to come out for that month that I'm ordering needs to be, if it's in any way tied to metal, it needs to be all grouped together. That way I have an idea of how many to order, because I'm like, okay, well, there are only 3 people right now that are picking up Teen Titans, but oh shit, you got a Teen Titans tie-in issue? Well, I'm ordering like 16 to 20 issues of metal, so I know I need to up that from 3 issues to at least 12, because a good majority of those people who are getting metal are getting all the tie-ins. So now I know I need to order up. I need to step up the amount on that Teen Titans issue or the Green Arrow one, because when those came out, I was like, no one told me that that the Teen Titans and Green Arrow and all these were metal tie-ins. If you go back and look on the order forms, it just says like Teen Titans 12. That's it. And I can't go and click on every single item and look at the synopsis of it. It would take entirely too long. There's over 3,600 items on every monthly order form. I just physically cannot go in and read every single thing. There are things that I know I need to focus on. There are things that I know I can breeze right by on that order form. So if you're gonna make an event and you're gonna put tie-ins on there, please, for the love of God, group it all together and specify right then and there that this is going to be involved in that event. That way I know how many I need to order.
Metal was really bad with it on multiple occasions, not just with their tie-in issues, but also with their new DC heroes. We have no way, unless you were paying attention, there's really no way of knowing those are supposed to be stories contained within the dealing with metal. To us, it just looks like it's just a new comic book called Unexpected.
I had no idea what the hell Damage was,
Lately, I will point credit to them in some way, because I don't know how much I like the idea of this. But now there is some events. There's the Infinity Countdown event. There is the Wedding to Batman, which is a self-contained event. There is also what other event am I missing?
I don't know, but they are doing stuff like Infinity Countdown. It says Captain Marvel Infinity Countdown, or it says Daredevil Infinity Countdown, Darkhawk Infinity Countdown. So that way I know, I understand what this is now.
But the problem with that, though, is you're creating new titles. You're creating, and Hunt for Wolverine, that's the other one I was thinking of.
Oh, yeah.
You're creating new titles, and you're just creating more books for people to get, and you're creating more number ones, which if you want to know more about our feelings on that, you can go to our last podcast about the number one issues.
The problem with issue ones.
Yeah. So you're just creating more titles. So I don't know how, I'm kind of like about it, but at least this way we know, okay, so this book goes with these. It goes, if they're getting Infinity Countdown, they're going to want this tie-in.
Right. So if I'm hearing this correctly, as a retailer working at Comic Relief, you enjoy it because there's organization, but as a consumer, you're like, fuck, more number ones? Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's more books. I don't understand. I understand, okay, Darkhawk. Darkhawk doesn't have his own ongoing series. Daredevil, I get it. I mean, at points, it's kind of like, why didn't you just try to make this a tie-in? But at the same time, it would kind of screw it up. It's really, I'm really
Here's the
wishy-washy
thing. I don't think that the Daredevil or Darkhawk stuff is really that integral to the Infinity Countdown story that's going on either. I don't think it is. I don't see a huge tie between the two. Infinity Countdown, the main series, is very involved with just mostly the Guardians.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, the Guardians.
Let's not give a synopsis. I'm just saying, for me, I don't see a huge need for those
These
tie-ins.
spin-offs are dealing with the other stones that are not found.
See, I'll applaud this. It just sparked a debate amongst you two, so you could talk about whether or not it's... So again, debates within the community on stances within things.
I don't know if you need to debate its relevance, but
it would possibly leave a debate, so conversation.
But I do want to speak to the listeners that may not actually come to Comic Relief, but they do have other comic shops that they go to because they're not in the area. If your retailer... that the shop that you go to doesn't have enough of these tie-ins, or they don't have enough of a certain thing, it's because honestly Diamond is doing us no favors in telling us, this is something that's being led up to, this is something that's being built up to, because we also cannot physically possibly read every single issue that walks in through this door, that comes through this door every month. It's every week. It's impossible for us to do. So if Diamond could, scratch our backs a little and just find a way to organize this or solicit this to the retailers themselves and let us know what's going on, then we can be a little bit more informed in our ordering. But, don't take it out on your retailers, guys. If you went in and you didn't find this issue, you didn't find that issue. And actually, one of the issues, me and Josh, it's not a bad problem to have, but Josh and I have slowly come to realize that this shop has actually been growing a little bit more than we realized, because you got to understand, we get a little bit of tunnel vision here. We're still a relatively new shop, only being open for about a year and a half. So we're still kind of trying to consistently order the things we have been, not realizing more and more people have actually been coming in and trying to get things and looking for certain issues. So we haven't been upping our orders accordingly because we just haven't realized the shop has been expanding the way that it has lately.
It's actually growing a little bit more than what we think, faster than what we think too, because we up our orders of Flash and the Punisher, and there's still not enough.
Yeah,
Like,
so
we up it and we still can't meet the demands.
So it's like we've reached our goal, that one of the goals that we've had, which is to obviously grow the shop, more visibility, without actually realizing we've done it yet. So but anyway, speaking to you guys who go to your comic shops, who are probably a little bit more well established than we are at this point, if your retailer doesn't have it, it's really it's not because they decided they wanted to fuck you over, or that they were just like, look, it's first come first serve, because we as retailers want to serve everybody. We want to be able to make sure everybody can get what they want. That's our goal. It's like you come in here, you can get every comic you're looking for. But it's hard when Diamond doesn't seem to have your best interest at heart, and making it as easy and as streamlined as possible for you to be as informed as possible.
Which leads perfectly into the next one.
Exactly.
Is Diamond could give you guys, as the retailers or any retailer in general, a baseline or suggestion for order amounts, so that way they can compare the amount that they have been ordering, the amount that people have on their hold list or their pull list, or the amount that other shops have been ordering, so you guys know in comparison what you should order.
And this actually could go with most of our podcasts that we will be discussing about problems with it. I think that this could be said about most conflicts, is that just giving us some kind of suggestion would help in any kind of situation, not just with the events, but definitely with the events. I mean, because it's hard to know, okay, so if I got, so many people getting metal, how many people is going to want the Teen Titans tie-in? Because we won't know that off the top of our heads.
Right. And here's the thing, too. The only reason I actually even offered this up as a solution is that I know Diamond can do this. When I first opened this shop up, I had all my orders. I had to have my orders filled before I actually opened the doors, right? Obviously, I needed product to sell. So the representative I had at the time, who she deals with new stores and new shops opening up. After so long, you get passed on to a new representative. But anyway, when I had put in my initial orders, she said, hey, I was going over your initial order form. I was looking at the amounts you were ordering. Here's an order form for they have their market research. They know, what people are looking for and what size cities and things like that. They've done their market research. They know it. They just don't offer it up. So she goes, hey, here's an order form for a shop that's very similar to yours, and here's the amounts that they're ordering. Here's the population of the city they're in. Here's kind of like the median income and all that kind of stuff. The stuff I had been doing here for Richmond. And I saw that my order form was completely way off base with that person's order form. And I had ordered way too much of some stuff and way too little of other things. When it comes to at least these events, right? Since we're speaking strictly to events in this podcast, when it comes to that, if they can say, hey, look, here's what some of the other shops in areas similar to yours are ordering as far as amounts, and I can take a look at that and see any discrepancies between my order or huge gaping holes between my order and theirs, that would be extremely helpful for me to know, okay, here's what's being hyped up. Because we as comic retailers, really, we're not a very well networked. We don't really get to interact with each other as much as I think would be beneficial to all of us to be able to do. If I could have a network of other retailers, if they had some, I mean, it sounds dumb, but like a chat website where I can just speak to strictly retailers, and we can talk to each other a little bit here and there about what's going on and what we should order and what's the next big thing. That would be extremely useful and extremely helpful. But the thing is, they at least have that information available to us, but they don't offer it up. I have to go out of my way and ask for it, and sometimes they say, no, we're not going to allow you to do that. They weren't, these order forms are private, or we'd have to contact that retailer and ask them if we could show them yours, blah blah blah. And it's like you're really kind of pigeonholing me here, because I'm just like, what am I supposed to do? I have no idea what to order on some of these things. I really don't. There are certain books that I've never heard of. I would never even expect to be as big as they are. And the next thing I know is I have not enough. And it makes it really hard, because and the thing is, you think Diamond should be looking out for us, because we're their bread and butter, really. Without us as retailers, they don't make money. If I go out of business, there's a big chunk of money that they just don't get anymore every week and every month and every year. So you'd think that they'd be looking out for their own interest and their oh shit, why am I losing the word? Whatever. you think they'd be looking out for us, though, and they're not. And I think this is a very simple solution.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our solutions, because we have all the answers here at Comic Relief After Hours.
Oh, you sound pretentious as fuck.
I do. Now, I'm going to pass the mic to Jake for closing statements.
All right, guys. Well, if you've stuck around this long, we really appreciate you guys listening. This is something we're definitely passionate about, and although maybe we're not getting as many views as we would like, this is something that we think is beneficial for anybody who's a comic book reader or a comic book collector. Even if there's any fellow retailers out there willing to listen to this stuff, let us know what you guys think down below. Are you running into these kinds of problems with events? You running into these kinds of problems with your retailers? Please let us know, guys. And be on the lookout, because here soon what we're going to start doing on this week's poll, which we do every Tuesday night. We give you the rundown and the reviews of all the new issues that are coming out this week, so you, as buyers, can be informed. We're going to start peppering in a little bit of a fun thing for you guys, where if we're going to have a code word, so to speak, for anybody who's around the area. So if you guys listen to it, the full podcast, and we're not going to telegraph it, we're going to put in a little code word each week, and if you can come in and give us that code word, you're going to get a discount on some of your books. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to start that next week. But guys, we really appreciate you listening, and if you are not a subscriber to this channel, please hit that subscribe button. But if you liked it, hit that thumbs up. If you want to be notified every time we put up new videos, make sure to hit that bell. And please, guys, comment below. We really want to know. We want some interaction with any of our listeners on what you guys think about events. Do you guys feel that it's being too much, or there's not enough? Do you feel like they're successful, or are there things you just don't want anymore? And is your retailer providing that service for you?
Hey, Jake.
Hey, what?
Can I say goodbye to the listeners?
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Jake's review on Civil War. Good night.
Take care, guys. Thank you.